Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie begins with John Brickner being released from prison on parole. An exchange between him and a judge tells us what we need to know. John has been in prison for 4 years, out of the 7 he needs to serve, but due to his model behavior, and the guilt he carries over killing a man gets him parole. He moves to Seattle, and gets a job as a construction worker, for a guy who seems like a real piece of work. That night, he is at a bar, and notices the bar waitress being harassed by a couple of drunk guys, and being the chivalrous man that he is, makes the guy apologize, and then promptly kicks him out. This model behavior manages to catch the notice of the owner, and that is how he manages to get his second job, as a bouncer. A sequence with a distinctly early 2000s rock music flavor, and we see John working at the construction site, and getting poorly treated by his boss. At the bar, he continues to punch, and kick out the drunk bar goers. This impressive ass kicking makes a guy approach him, and offers John a job, which he declines. One day, while working at the construction site, John is approached by the wife of the man he killed. Veronica tells him, she wrote to petition for his parole. He begins to thank her, but she says, she didn't do it because of the letters he had sent her. She did it because she has an 8-year-old daughter, who needs a heart transplant. And as she blames John for murdering her husband, which he did, she wants him to pay for the $250,000 surgery. John, who is portraying the tough-looking guy with a heart of gold, goes to his room, and counts the meager dollars he's earned, and hides them in a vent. That night, as Frankie the bar waitress tries to make him count his blessings, by exclaiming that her ass is a wonderland, John asks her where he can find the guy who offered him the job the other day. Frankie takes him to see the guy, Reno. It turns out that they manage fighters for an illegal fighting ring. When he sees what the job is all about, John refuses. Reno and Frankie try to convince him to stay, by telling him he can earn up to 6 figures for a fight, but good guy John is having none of it. Back at his job the other day, the boss, who has some prejudice against convicts, fires John, even though he's clearly been working hard, and honestly. Ironically, the boss suffers from a heart attack right then and there, and John saves his life while the paramedics arrive. That night, he goes to visit Veronica, to tell her he won't be able to pay for her daughter's surgery. Veronica starts yelling at him, and brings out the letters he had written to her from prison, offering to help. Sarah, the daughter, walks out due to all the commotion, and is told to go back to bed. Sarah instead introduces her pet to John, and instantly that melts his already gooey heart, and he tells Veronica he'll see what he can do. John visits the fighting ring, and is able to fight in his first fight as a sub, for a guy who passed out. He is able to defeat another guy, after suffering a bite, and being cool and everything. After winning, he splits his winnings with the other guy who had passed out, because, you guessed it, gooey heart and all. No Stone Cold Steve in here. The next day, when John returns from his run, he finds Reno and Frankie in his room. They've already found his stash of money, and tell him, in order to participate in more fights, they need more money. Money that they would have had, if John hadn't split his earnings with the other guy. They go and talk to a guy called the Deacon, who is something of an investor. Reno wants Deacon to give John a chance, because he's good, but Deacon says no one can trust John, because there is no long-term guarantee. John asks to talk to him alone, and after the Deacon gives him a half-hearted religious analogy, it's clear that just like most things in life, the Deacon will take money. Reno pawns off his father's cufflinks to get some money, and then they visit a guy, Nestor. Reno owes him some money, and Nestor has had enough of Reno. He tells his men to kill him, when John interjects, and makes a deal with him. The loser pays 10 grand. Nestor agrees, and we see what is supposed to be a badass fight between John and Nestor's guy, as they fight surrounded by dogs, who will bite if they get too close. Safe to say, the fight is highly yawn-inducing, but the good thing is that John wins, and now they have enough money to go see the Deacon. John then gets a call from Veronica, whose name on the caller ID prompts Frankie to ask John who she is. Did we mention why Frankie hangs out with Reno? We see her telling John she does so because Reno had saved her life. John doesn't seem that much interested, and instead asks Frankie what Reno had pawned. Later we see John visiting Veronica at the county hospital. Sarah had been doing alright, but has collapsed, and is now admitted. John tells Veronica he is working on getting the money for Sarah's surgery, and Veronica does her best impression of a mom under pressure, who smokes and drinks instead of actually doing something, other than an ex-convict arranging the money. Talk about working smarter, not harder. Back at Reno and Frankie's place, Frankie accuses him of flying blind. She mentions a guy named Veltz, and Reno tells her to back off, and give it a break. He had just gotten Nestor and Trini off his back. But Frankie likes John, and says that he's not a cash machine. Reno gets mad, and then tells her John had killed a man, which is why he was in jail. He asks her if she thinks he could be one of the good guys, and also that they need him to pay off their debts. John overhears all this but doesn't react. We are then treated to John taking part in various fights, and winning them all. There is also a scene where John comes home to Frankie alone. He asks her about her skills with a needle, and why she never went to med school. She asks him what makes him think that she didn't. Meanwhile, Reno had been out playing cards, when Veltz's men come up to him, and take him outside. They give him a good beating, and tell him to pay the $150,000 he owes Veltz, within a week. If he doesn't, they threaten to harm Frankie. Reno then arranges another fight with Nestor's man. It's a tough fight, and John takes a few blows, making Frankie want to stop the fight. But it isn't really anything our guy John can't handle, and with Reno urging him to rage, he wins the fight after a bloody hit he delivers to his opponent. Later, while they're celebrating, John says that the fight should have been a six-figure fight, but Reno says they still have to wait. John gets an incoherent call from Veronica, and rushes to her apartment. There he finds a letter, informing Veronica, the organ donor had declined her request. As is her typical way, Veronica is found with her wrists slit in the bathroom, and John has to rush her to the hospital. While they're waiting, Frankie asks John about Veronica, and he tells her the whole story. We also get to see scars on Frankie's wrists, indicating that Reno had saved her life after she had tried to commit suicide. John goes to see Veronica, and tells her she can't give up. She says, they could have given her heart to Sarah, which is a cop-out because for that, she should have just come to the hospital to donate, and not let herself die, and left to be found. But anyways. John promises her that he'll get the money. Reno sets up another fight for Nestor's guy, betting $150,000. Veltz's guys corner Reno in the bathroom, and he promises them the money after the fight. Frankie sees the men, and is upset at Reno for not telling her what he's up to. The fight begins and John defeats the guy, but Nestor wants the fight to be to death. John refuses and forfeits. Frankie rushes after him to give him a hug, while her boyfriend gets badly beaten up by Veltz's guys. On their way back home, John finds out about the debt, and tells Reno that he should have told him. Reno says that it's not his problem. Frankie speaks up, telling John that it is her debt that Reno has taken on. Life goes on, and one day, while having food at a diner, John notices a car that has been stopping outside for a few days. He gets in, and is driven to see a rich old man. The man says, since John saved the life of his son-in-law, the construction worker, he owes him a debt. John tells him about needing money for Sarah's heart transplant, and urges him to pay for a big fight. It turns out, the man is Veltz himself. He offers John a choice: he would either clear Reno's debt, or help pay for John's fight for getting the transplant money. And John chooses Reno's debts. In the next scene, John takes Veronica home, and she begins to tell her husband's killer her life story. As she lights up a cigarette, she says her daughter is her biggest accomplishment, and she didn't mind having her, and forgetting all her other dreams. She also tells him that she knows John hadn't meant to kill her husband, it was done in self-defense. John then goes to visit the deacon. He asks him why Deacon had told him the story about the unforgiving slave, but the deacon seems to be out of sorts, and tells him that he can't help him. Back home, John is packing up to leave, when Reno comes in to thank him for clearing his debts. Frankie also tells him how Reno had bought her from Veltz, and still paid for her, even though Veltz had delivered her to him half dead, after she had slit her wrists. Reno gets a call, the Timmons fight is on, having been paid by an unknown person, and they all get excited. The fight turns out to be the toughest one yet, and when the cage's floor falls down into the basement, it seems that John has died. But, covered in some questionable substance, John rises up, and asks if they can finish up. He ends up winning the fight, and Reno comes up with his name, The Damage. He gets Veronica a donor for her daughter, and also gives Reno his father's cufflinks back, which he had bought for him from the pawn shop. There is a super awkward hug, before they start walking, and all is good in the world. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.